All right, so today we are going deep into India's pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
And, I was going through these reports, analyses, even some government initiatives.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's pretty remarkable how much this industry is growing.
Oh, it's
It's really exploding.
yeah.
And it's not just turning out generic drugs anymore.
No, no, not at all.
We're talking about innovation,
Absolutely.
ambition, a real drive to become a global leader
Yeah.
in high-end drug production.
Yeah. Global leader. And for good reason, they have a lot of the pieces in place.
Right, and they've got the numbers to back it up.
Yeah.
One report I was looking at projected that by 2047, the Indian pharmaceutical market could hit 450 billion US dollars.
Oh, that's not a typo.
No,
That's an incredible number.
that's a potential game changer.
It is a game changer. And when you look at some of the things that are driving this growth,
Well,
things like the ripple effects of COVID-19,
right.
the rise of biosimilars.
Now, just real quick, for someone who's not super familiar with the industry,
Sure.
what exactly are biosimilars?
So biosimilars, they're essentially highly similar versions of very complex biologic drugs.
Okay. Okay.
So think about, kind of like the generic version, but for these much more complex drugs.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like generics, but for the really big leagues.
Yeah, exactly. And they're much more difficult to produce.
Okay.
So it's a big deal that India is becoming a major player in that space.
So we've got the ripple effects from COVID, we've got the rise of biosimilars,
Yes.
and we've got a government that is really going all in on supporting this growth.
Oh, absolutely. They're putting their money where their mouth is
Absolutely.
in terms of policies, incentives, everything.
So, for someone who's listening to this who maybe pops an aspirin now and then,
Yeah.
why should they care about what's happening with India's pharma scene?
Well, I think for the average person, it's important to realize that 1 in 5 generic drugs globally comes from India. So there's a very good chance that medication you or someone you know relies on was made in India.
That's a good point.
And, it's not just about the volume, it's about making life-saving treatments affordable and accessible.
Right.
You think back to the push to make HIV treatment available worldwide.
Yeah.
India played a massive role in that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Bringing down the cost, making those treatments available to people who desperately needed them.
So they've got a history of stepping up to the plate.
Absolutely, and it seems like they're committed to continuing that.
And the government is definitely backing that up with some pretty substantial initiatives.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like we were looking at the production length incentive PLI scheme.
Yeah.
They're putting 2.04 billion US dollars
Wow.
into that.
That's serious investment.
It is serious investment.
Yeah.
And then you've got the national medical devices policy as well.
Right, so they're really looking at the whole picture, not
Yeah.
just pharmaceuticals, but also the devices that go along with it.
So those are pretty clear signals that India is serious about, boosting domestic production,
Yeah.
becoming a global hub for pharmaceuticals and medical devices.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that their healthcare sector internally is growing so rapidly
Right.
that they're building this huge internal market alongside their export goals.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
It is. It is.
Okay, so we've talked about, the big picture, the overall growth,
Yeah.
but let's actually unpack the industry itself a little bit.
Okay. Sounds good.
Because when I was going through these reports, I saw all these different terms, and I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot more complex than I thought it was.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about APIs,
Yeah.
formulations, biosimilars,
Right.
CRAMs. I don't even know what CRAMs is.
Whereabouts. Yeah.
But it sounds a lot more complicated than just making pills.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
So break it down for us. What are all these different pieces?
Okay. So let's start with APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Those are essentially the raw materials for drugs.
Gotcha.
Then you have formulations, which is the final product. You see tablets, capsules, injections, all that stuff.
So like the stuff that we actually see on the shelf.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Biosimilars, we talked about those a little bit earlier. Those are the almost identical versions of complex biologic drugs.
Right.
And then CRAMS, that stands for Contract Research and Manufacturing Services.
Ah.
So basically, they're doing the research and production for other companies.
So they're not just making the ingredients, they're doing the science behind it too.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
And even making the finished products for other companies.
So it's like the full package.
It really is.
That's incredible.
And that's part of the reason why they're so successful. They have this diversified portfolio.
Yeah, because if one area kind of takes a dip,
Yeah.
they've got all these other things to fall back on.
Exactly. It makes them less vulnerable to market fluctuations.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and it also positions them to meet a wider range of needs, from those basic generics to those cutting-edge biopharmaceuticals.
So they can kind of cater to whoever needs whatever.
Exactly. They're covering all of their bases.
Wow, okay.
And speaking of meeting market needs, have you seen the projected growth numbers for this industry?
Oh, yeah. They're pretty mind-blowing.
They're huge.
We're talking $65 billion by 2024.
Yeah.
130 billion by 2030.
It's incredible.
What does that kind of growth signal to someone who might be interested in, investing in this sector?
I mean, to me, that signals enormous potential.
Yeah.
This isn't just about, abstract numbers. This is about real opportunities for investors, entrepreneurs, anyone who's looking to get involved in a really booming industry.
It sounds like it's the place to be right now.
It does. It really does. And I think we're only going to see more and more interest in the coming years as this growth continues.
So it's not just about quantity either.
Right.
It's about quality and innovation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the stats that really stood out to me is that India is already the third largest producer of APIs globally.
That's right. Yeah.
And they contribute a massive 57% of APIs to the WHO's pre-qualified list.
Yeah, that's huge.
So they're not just making a lot, they're making good stuff.
Exactly. They're not content to just be the pharmacy of the world. They want to be the innovation hub of the world.
Right.
And I think we're starting to see that happen.
Yeah. And they're putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to innovation.
Oh, absolutely.
They're investing in R&D. The government is supporting it.
Yeah, we're seeing initiatives like centers of excellence popping up focused on cutting-edge research.
So it's not just about making affordable generics anymore.
Right.
This sounds like they're gearing up to develop new drugs, new treatments, potentially impacting global health in a whole new way.
I think that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the talent, they have the infrastructure, and now they have the financial backing.
It's all coming together.
It is. It's all coming together, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see what comes out of India in the next, 5, 10, 20 years.
And it's not just staying within India's borders either.
Not at all.
These reports are highlighting a lot of interesting trends.
Yes.
Like Indian companies forming partnerships with global players.
Right.
Expanding into new markets like Latin America and Russia.
Yep.
Making strategic acquisitions.
Yeah, like Sun Pharma buying Concert Pharmaceuticals.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was a big deal, and I think we're going to see more of that.
So these are some pretty bold moves.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think is driving this, this global ambition?
I think it's a few things. They have this confidence now.
Yeah.
They've proven themselves on the global stage.
You've kind of tasted success, and now they want more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they see the opportunity to really become a dominant force in the pharmaceutical world.
So they're not just playing defense.
No.
They're going on the offensive.
They're going on the offensive and, competing head-to-head with some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies out there.
Now, that's going to be a risky strategy, right?
It is. There are definitely risks involved.
Because these are some big players that have been around for a long time.
Absolutely. They have deep pockets. They have global reach.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy for Indian companies to just come in and disrupt the market.
So what do you think are some of the potential downsides here?
Well, competition is fierce in this industry.
Yeah.
And global markets can be unpredictable.
So you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And, there's always the risk of political instability, economic downturns,
Sure.
all sorts of things that could throw a wrench in the plans.
So they got to be prepared for anything.
They do. They have to be very agile and adaptable.
But it sounds like from what we're seeing, they are.
They are.
They're aware of the challenges, and they seem to be adjusting their strategies accordingly.
Yeah, they're not just throwing money around.
Well,
they're being very strategic with their investment.
they're being smart about it.
Yeah, they're focusing on areas where they have a clear advantage.
Like what?
Well, things like cost-effective manufacturing.
Right, they've always had that.
They've always had that. But they're also building a growing expertise in those complex generics and biosimilars.
So it's not just about being the cheapest anymore.
No, it's about being strategic and playing to their strengths.
So it's a whole new ballgame.
It is. It's a whole new ballgame, and I think that's what makes this so fascinating to watch.
So how do you think COVID-19 impacted all of this?
Well, COVID-19 was a major disruptor for the entire world.
Yeah.
And the pharmaceutical industry was no exception.
Right.
But in a lot of ways, I think it was a catalyst for change in India's pharmaceutical industry.
Really?
Yeah, I think it really forced them to step up their game.
How so?
Well, think about it. They developed their own vaccines.
That was huge.
They launched initiatives like Mission COVID Sriracha.
To ramp up testing and treatment. Right. They provided crucial support to research and development through organizations like BRAC.
It was incredible to see them step up like that, not just for India, but for the world.
Absolutely.
It really showcased their capabilities.
Yeah, and it earned them a lot of respect on the global stage.
But what about the long-term impact?
Yeah.
Do you think COVID-19 fundamentally changed the game for India's pharmaceutical industry?
I think it has, in a few ways.
Like how?
Well, first of all, it forced them to innovate and adapt at an unprecedented pace.
They had no choice.
They didn't. They had to move quickly, and they did.
And they did it well.
They did.
Which is impressive.
Yeah, it also strengthened their research infrastructure and manufacturing capabilities.
So they had to build things up really quickly.
They did, and that's going to benefit them in the long run.
Makes sense.
And then I think perhaps most importantly, it earned them global recognition.
For being able to deliver.
Exactly.
In a crisis. Yeah, they showed the world that they could handle pressure and deliver high-quality, affordable healthcare solutions.
So it's not just about bouncing back.
Right.
It's about using that momentum
Yeah.
to propel them even further.
Exactly. They've proven themselves, and now they have this incredible opportunity to build on that success.
But let's be realistic. It's not all smooth sailing, is it?
No,
There are always challenges.
There are always challenges.
These reports definitely highlight some of them.
Right.
We were talking about regulatory hurdles, pricing pressures in global markets,
Yeah.
the need to move from volume to value leadership.
Right. Those are all real challenges that they have to address.
But what do you think that looks like? What are some concrete steps they're taking?
Well, one key area is investment in R&D.
Okay.
They're really pouring resources into developing new and innovative products.
So not just generics anymore.
Not just generics. They're looking at complex biosimilars, novel therapies.
So moving up the value chain.
Exactly. Moving up the value chain, competing in higher value markets.
And that'll help them with the pricing pressures.
It will, because they won't be so reliant on just being the low-cost provider.
Makes sense. What about those regulatory hurdles?
Yeah, those can be tricky.
I mean, navigating different regulations in different countries sounds like a nightmare.
It can be a nightmare.
So how are they dealing with that?
Well, they're getting a lot more savvy at navigating the global regulatory landscape.
Right.
They're investing in quality control, building relationships with regulatory bodies worldwide.
So being proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And addressing compliance issues head on.
So it sounds like they're really taking a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, they have to.
But, we've been talking a lot about India's global ambitions.
Right.
But what about healthcare access within India itself?
Yeah, that's an important point.
With such a massive population.
Huge population.
How are they ensuring that their own people are benefiting?
That's a crucial question, and one that the reports address directly. So while they are exporting a significant portion of their production,
Yeah.
they're also very aware of the need to improve access and affordability for their own citizens.
Especially in rural areas.
Especially in rural areas, absolutely.
So what are they doing to kind of bridge that gap?
So they're implementing a range of initiatives. One example is the Pradhan Mantri Bhartiya Janaushadhi Kendras,
Okay.
which is a network of dedicated centers that provide affordable generic medicines across the country.
So making it easier for people to get the medicine they need.
Exactly. And they're also working on strengthening healthcare infrastructure in rural areas.
So building hospitals, clinics.
Yeah, training healthcare professionals.
So they're not just thinking about the drugs themselves.
No,
They're thinking about the whole ecosystem.
the whole ecosystem, yeah.
That's good.
Raising awareness about preventative care.
So it sounds like they're really trying to find that balance,
Yeah,
expanding globally, but also ensuring their own people benefit.
exactly. It's a complex challenge, but it's one they seem determined to tackle.
Okay, so we've talked about, the big picture trends, the challenges, the opportunity.
Yeah.
But let's get a bit more specific.
Very.
Because the reports also mention some interesting moves by individual companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity happening.
Acquisitions, expansions, new product launches.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic sector.
So what are some of the standouts for you?
Well, we see companies like Lupin aggressively expanding into new markets.
Okay.
Sun Pharma is really focusing on specialty therapies and complex generics.
So moving up that value chain again.
Exactly. And then you have a whole wave of startups,
Really?
yeah, that are pushing the boundaries of innovation.
In what areas?
Areas like biopharmaceuticals and digital health.
So it's like a healthy mix of those established players
Right.
and those disruptors.
Yeah, which is great to see.
It keeps things interesting.
It does.
But, are they all playing by the same rules?
That's a good question.
As these companies become more powerful,
Yeah.
are there concerns about ethical considerations?
Exactly.
Conflicts of interest.
Those are important questions and ones that are being discussed within the industry.
So they're not just ignoring it.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
You know, as with any rapidly growing sector, there are going to be challenges and growing pains.
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
It does.
But it sounds like there's a growing focus on transparency,
Yeah.
accountability, responsible business practices.
Exactly. And, you have organizations like the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance that
Okay,
are
yeah.
actively promoting ethical standards and best practices among their members.
So it's not just about growth at all costs.
No.
It's about sustainable and ethical growth.
Exactly.
But let's face it,
Yeah,
these companies are going head-to-head with some global giants.
they are. They are.
Do they really stand a chance of disrupting the established pharmaceutical landscape?
I think that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
They certainly have the potential.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the cost advantage, the manufacturing capacity, and they're building this growing track record of innovation.
So they've got a lot going for them.
They do, but they also face really stiff competition.
From those multinational corporations with deep pockets.
Yeah, the ones that have been around for decades.
So what do you think it'll take for them to succeed?
Well, I think one crucial factor is their ability to move beyond generic drugs
Okay.
and establish themselves as innovators in their own right.
So they can't just rely on that cost advantage anymore.
Right, they need to develop new intellectual property.
Create those unique products.
Exactly, products that offer real value to patients and healthcare providers.
So it's about finding that niche.
Yeah, finding that niche and excelling in it.
So innovation is key.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they can't just focus on creating new drugs, right?
Right.
They also need to figure out how to get those drugs to the people who need them.
Yes, distribution, access, affordability, these are all interconnected challenges.
Yeah, it's a complex puzzle.
It is, it is.
And it's not just about logistics. It's about understanding the unique needs of different markets.
Yeah,
Developing tailored strategies.
exactly. You can't just have a one-size-fits-all approach.
So they've got to be adaptable.
They do.
Think globally.
Absolutely.
So what are some examples of how they're approaching these challenges?
Well, we're seeing a lot of creative solutions emerging.
Like what?
So some companies are partnering with local organizations in developing countries
Okay.
to improve distribution networks.
So getting those medications to even those remote communities.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really important.
It is. And others are exploring innovative pricing models like tiered pricing or pay-for-performance schemes
Okay.
to make treatments more affordable in low-income settings.
So really thinking outside the box?
Yeah, they have to.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to see that kind of innovation.
But, with all this focus on global expansion,
Right?
is there a risk that they'll lose sight of their home market?
That's a valid concern.
Because India still has a lot of its own healthcare challenges to address.
It does. It absolutely does.
So how do they balance that?
Well, I think what's interesting is that their global ambitions and their domestic priorities are actually quite intertwined.
How so?
Well, by developing innovative solutions for global health challenges, they're also creating solutions that can benefit their own population.
So like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that play out in areas like telemedicine and digital health.
Oh, interesting.
These technologies have the potential to really revolutionize healthcare delivery.
Especially in those rural and underserved areas.
Exactly. And Indian companies are at the forefront of these advancements.
So they're not just exporting drugs,
Well,
they're exporting innovation and expertise.
Exactly. And that has implications far beyond just the pharmaceutical industry.
So what do you mean?
Well, it's about building a knowledge-based economy, fostering entrepreneurship, creating a new generation of skilled workers.
So it's like a ripple effect.
It is. It's a really powerful ripple effect.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see.
But let's be honest, there are going to be bumps in the road.
Oh, there always are.
So what are some of the potential pitfalls they need to be aware of as they navigate this path to global leadership?
Well, one potential pitfall is becoming too focused on short-term gains
Okay.
and losing sight of long-term sustainability.
Right, because it's tempting to chase those quick profits.
It is. It is.
But that can lead to compromises on quality, ethics, social responsibility.
Exactly. And that's something they need to be very mindful of.
So they need to keep their eyes on the prize.
They do.
And the prize being a future where healthcare is more accessible,
Yes.
affordable, and equitable for everyone.
Absolutely. That's the ultimate goal.
And that requires a commitment to innovation
Yeah.
collaboration, and a deep understanding of the needs of patients and communities all over the world.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
from the nuts and bolts of the industry
Yeah.
to the global implications of India's pharmaceutical boom.
It's a fascinating story.
It is. What's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the big takeaway is that India's pharmaceutical industry is at a crossroads.
Okay.
They've achieved remarkable success,
They have.
but they're also facing some significant challenges.
Right.
The choices they make now about innovation, sustainability, global engagement are going to determine not only their own future,
Right.
but potentially the future of healthcare for millions around the world.
So it's not just a business story.
I know.
It's a human story.
Exactly, and it's a story that's still being written.
Yeah, the ending is yet to be determined.
And it's up to all of us, consumers, investors, policymakers, healthcare professionals, to shape that ending.
So we all have a role to play.
We do.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with.
It is.
Thanks for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
It's a topic I'm really passionate about,
Me too.
and I hope this conversation has sparked some curiosity.
Yeah.
Inspired our listeners to learn more.
I hope so.
And who knows, maybe our listener will be part of writing the next chapter of this incredible story.
That would be amazing.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another insightful exploration of a topic that matters.
Sounds good. Yeah. So, where were we? Oh, yeah, we were talking about, the impact of COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a huge disruptor for everyone,
Oh, absolutely.
but it sounds like it really put India's pharmaceutical capabilities in the spotlight.
It really did. It kind of forced the world to pay attention.
Yeah, because, I mean, they really stepped up,
Yeah.
developing their own vaccines, launching initiatives like Mission COVID Suraksha to ramp up testing and treatment.
Right. All that stuff with BRAC, supporting R&D.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It was incredible to see them not just, take care of their own people, but also contribute to the global effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they really showed that they could play on that global stage.
And do it effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's going to benefit them in the long run.
But what's really interesting to me is the long-term impact,
Mm-hmm.
beyond just, the immediate response to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Has COVID-19 fundamentally changed the game for India's pharmaceutical industry?
I think it has in several ways.
Like how?
Well, for one thing, it's forced them to innovate and adapt at an unprecedented pace.
Right. They had no choice.
They really didn't, They had to move quickly, and they did.
And they did it well.
They did,
Wow.
which is really impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
It's also strengthened their research infrastructure and their manufacturing capabilities.
So they kind of had to build things up really quickly.
They did. And,
Right.
those investments, those are going to benefit them for years to come.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And then, I think perhaps most importantly, it's earned them that global recognition.
That they can deliver
Exactly.
when it matters.
Yeah, they showed the world that they could handle the pressure and deliver high-quality, affordable healthcare solutions in a crisis.
So it's not just about bouncing back.
No.
It's about using that momentum to propel themselves forward.
Exactly. And I think they're doing that. They've proven themselves, and now they have this incredible opportunity to build on that success.
But, it's not all smooth sailing, is it?
No, it's not.
I mean, there are always challenges in any industry.
Always challenges.
And these reports highlight some of those challenges for India's pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Regulatory hurdles, pricing pressures in global markets,
Right.
the need to move from, volume to value leadership.
Yeah, those are all very real challenges that they have to address if they want to achieve their goals.
So what does that look like? What are some of the steps they're taking?
Well, one key area is investment in research and development.
Okay.
They're really pouring resources into developing new and innovative products.
So not just generics anymore.
Not just generics. They're looking at complex biosimilars,
Okay.
novel therapies.
So moving up that value chain.
It's exactly moving up that value chain, and that's going to allow them to compete in those higher value markets and, not be so reliant on just being the low-cost provider.
And that helps with those pricing pressures too.
It does. It does because, they'll have more leverage. They won't be as vulnerable to those fluctuations in the market.
Okay, that makes sense. What about those regulatory hurdles? Because, navigating different regulations in different countries sounds like a total nightmare.
It can be. It can be a real headache. But,
Sure.
Indian companies are getting much more savvy at navigating the global regulatory landscape.
Okay, so they're learning as they go.
They are, and they're investing in quality control,
Oh, wow.
building relationships with regulatory bodies worldwide,
So being proactive.
being proactive and addressing those compliance issues head on.
So it sounds like they're taking a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, they have to, there's no easy solution. There's no magic bullet.
Well, it's good that they're recognizing that and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But, we've been talking a lot about India's global ambitions.
Right.
But what about healthcare access within India itself?
Yeah, that's a really important point. They have such a massive population. It's a huge population. And, ensuring that their own people benefit from this pharmaceutical boom, that's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are they doing that?
Well, the reports actually address that directly.
Okay.
And, while they are exporting a significant portion of their pharmaceutical production,
Sure.
they're also very aware of the need to improve access and affordability for their own citizens.
Especially in those rural areas where it's harder to get access.
Absolutely, especially in those rural areas where the infrastructure may not be as developed.
So what are they doing to kind of bridge that gap?
So they're implementing a range of initiatives. One example is the Pradhan Mantri Bhartiya Janoshadi Kendras.
Okay. And what is that?
So that's a network of dedicated centers that provide affordable generic medicines across the country.
So just making it easier for people to get the medicines they need?
Exactly. And they're also working on strengthening healthcare infrastructure in those rural areas.
So building hospitals, clinics, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, training healthcare professionals.
So it's not just about the drugs themselves.
No,
Yeah.
it's about the whole ecosystem.
Right.
Making sure that people have access to quality healthcare.
And that they know how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, raising awareness about preventative care, all of that is really important.
So that's like they're really trying to find that balance,
Yeah,
expanding globally, but also ensuring that their own people are benefiting from this growth.
exactly. And it's a tough balance to strike, but it's one that they seem to be committed to.
Okay, so we've talked about, the big picture trends, the challenges, the opportunities.
Right.
But the reports also highlight some interesting moves by individual companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity happening. It's a very dynamic sector.
So what are some of the standouts for you?
Well, we see companies like Lupin aggressively expanding into new markets. Sun Pharma is really focusing on specialty therapies and those complex generics.
So again, moving up that value chain.
Exactly.
And what about those startups we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, there's a whole wave of startups that are really pushing the boundaries of innovation.
In what areas?
Areas like biopharmaceuticals and digital health, they're really kind of shaking things up.
So it sounds like there's a really healthy mix of those established players and those disruptors.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. It keeps things interesting, keeps everyone on their toes.
But are they all playing by the same rules?
That's a good question.
Because, as these companies become more powerful,
Yeah.
are there concerns about ethical considerations, potential conflicts of interest?
Those are really important questions and ones that are being discussed more and more within the industry.
So it's not something they're just ignoring.
No, not at all. I think there's a growing awareness of the need for ethical conduct and responsible business practices.
And how is that playing out?
Well, you have organizations like the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance,
Okay.
and they're actively promoting ethical standards and best practices among their members.
So it's like a self-regulating kind of thing.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
And, it's not just about avoiding scandals or bad press.
It's about doing the right thing.
It's about doing the right thing. It's about building trust with patients, with healthcare providers, with the public.
And ultimately, that's good for business.
It is. In the long run, it definitely is.
Well, it's not just about growth at all costs.
No.
It's about sustainable and ethical growth.
Exactly. And I think that's something that Indian companies are increasingly recognizing.
So they're starting to think long-term.
Yeah. And, they have to if they want to be seen as true leaders in the global pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, so we've talked about the ethical considerations, but let's face it, these companies are going head-to-head with some global giants.
They are. They are.
Do they really stand a chance of disrupting the established pharmaceutical landscape?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It is.
But I think they do have the potential. They
Yeah.
have the cost advantage, the
Yeah.
manufacturing capacity, and they're building that track record of innovation.
So they've got a lot going for them.
They do, but they also face really stiff competition from those well-established multinational corporations.
Right. The ones with deep pockets and global reach.
Exactly.
So what do you think it will take for them to succeed? What are the key factors?
Well, I think one crucial factor is their ability to move beyond generic drugs,
Okay.
and establish themselves as innovators in their own right.
So they can't just rely on that cost advantage anymore.
Exactly. They need to develop new intellectual property, create those differentiated products that offer unique value.
So finding that niche and really excelling in it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not going to be easy, but I think they have the talent and the resources to do it. It's not just about creating new drugs, it's also about making sure those drugs get to the people who need them.
Right. Distribution, access, affordability.
Exactly. And that's a whole other challenge, especially when you're talking about a global market.
Yeah, it's a complex puzzle.
It really is. And it's not just about logistics, it's
Right.
about understanding the unique needs of different markets
Right.
and developing those tailored strategies.
So you can't just have like a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, definitely not. You have to be adaptable. You have to think globally.
So what are some examples of how they're approaching these challenges?
Well, we're seeing some pretty creative solutions emerging.
Okay, like what?
For example, some companies are partnering with local organizations in developing countries
Okay.
to improve distribution networks.
So making sure those medications reach those remote communities?
Exactly, because, often those are the communities that need it the most.
Right.
And then you have others that are exploring innovative pricing models,
Oh.
like tiered pricing or pay-for-performance schemes.
To make treatments more affordable.
Yeah, especially in low-income settings.
So it's like they're really thinking outside the box.
Yeah. They have to be creative to overcome these challenges.
Well, it's encouraging to see that they're not just, throwing up their hands and saying it's too hard.
Right. It shows a real commitment to making a difference.
But, with all this focus on global expansion,
Yeah.
is there a risk that they might lose sight of their home market?
That's a valid concern for sure.
Because India still has its own healthcare challenges to address.
It does. It absolutely does. And, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of improving access and affordability within India itself.
So how do they balance those two things?
So I think what's interesting is that their global ambitions and their domestic priorities are actually pretty intertwined.
How so?
Well, by developing these innovative solutions for global health challenges,
Right.
they're also creating solutions that can benefit their own population.
So it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly, exactly. And we're seeing that play out in areas like telemedicine and digital health.
Oh, interesting.
Those technologies have the potential to really revolutionize healthcare delivery.
Especially in those rural areas.
Exactly. And Indian companies are right there at the forefront of those advancements.
So they're not just exporting drugs.
Right.
They're exporting innovation and expertise.
Exactly. And that has implications far beyond just the pharmaceutical industry.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, it's about building a knowledge-based economy, fostering entrepreneurship, creating a new generation of skilled workers.
So it's like this ripple effect that goes out and touches all these different areas.
It's a really powerful ripple effect, and I think it's one of the most exciting things about this whole story.
But let's be realistic. There are going to be bumps in the road.
Oh, there always are. No journey is without its challenges.
So what are some of the potential pitfalls they need to be aware of as they navigate this path to global leadership?
Well, I think one potential pitfall is becoming too focused on short-term gains and losing sight of long-term sustainability.
Right, because it's tempting to chase those quick profits.
It is, but, that can lead to compromises on quality ethics, social responsibility.
And that's not good for anyone in the long run.
It's not, it's a short-sighted approach, and it can really damage your reputation.
So they need to stay focused on the bigger picture.
They do. They need to keep their eyes on the prize.
And what is the prize?
The prize is a future where healthcare is more accessible, affordable, and equitable for everyone.
That's a big prize.
It is a big prize, and it's one that's worth fighting for.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We've gone from the nuts and bolts of the industry to the global implications of India's pharmaceutical boom.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
So what's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the big takeaway is that India's pharmaceutical industry is at a crossroads.
Okay.
They've achieved remarkable success.
They have?
But they're also facing significant challenges. And the choices they make now about innovation, sustainability, global engagement, those choices are going to determine not only their own future, but potentially the future of healthcare for millions around the world.
So it's a big responsibility.
It is a huge responsibility.
But it sounds like they're up for the challenge.
I think they are.
Yeah.
They have the talent, the resources, the drive.
And hopefully the wisdom to make the right choices.
I hope so too, because the stakes are high.
Well, This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
It has.
I've learned a lot.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise.
It's been my pleasure. This is a topic I'm really passionate about, and I hope our listeners found it interesting as well.
I'm sure they did. And, maybe some of them will be inspired to learn more
I hope so.
or even get involved in this industry.
That would be fantastic. There's so much potential there.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. But we'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that matters.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening, everyone.